Portland and the state of Oregon believe in the rule of law, and we can manage our own local public safety needs. And there is no need for military troops in our major city.
A few minutes later.
This is the scene just outside the ICE facility in Portland. Hundreds of residents live in apartments just feet away. They routinely call police about the noise and crime.
I'm calling about the protesters. They've cornered 2 women out here. They need help. Please send the cops.
But the cops did not come. Residents on their own.
Turn that down! It's midnight!
So we got the major breaking news today that President Trump will indeed be following through on his vow to deploy federal troops to the city of Portland, Oregon, in order to quash what has been a repeated and nonstop cycle of Antifa and anti-ICE riots breaking out in the streets basically every single night. And the hilarious but expected response from local Democrats in the state, who clearly do not have control of the situation. As a matter of fact, one could argue they are intentionally allowing this. They're not making any attempt whatsoever to get a minor hold of the situation, is of course to turn around and say that President Trump is engaged in a federal overreach and there is no reason for this. And guys, trust me, we have Portland and the whole situation perfectly under control. As a matter of fact, it turns out we have a live reaction feed of the Democrat Party right now. So let's take a listen to what they're saying about the Trump deployment.
Please disperse. Nothing to see here, please.
No, literally, right? Because what's important to understand about this situation is, although we covered the incident this week that likely sparked the response from Trump, which is what you saw at the ICE facility in Eugene, Oregon, it's important to understand this is nothing new. This has been something that is going on for several months, if not several years. As a matter of fact, rumor has it, people are still protesting George Floyd into this city to this very day, right? It just never went away. Even on the front of anti-ICE, it's worth noting that you may remember back in June, you had the California anti-ICE riots, particularly in Los Angeles. Well, the less covered story about this was the fact that the same thing was erupting at the same time in Portland. Except the difference between California and Oregon is up there, it just never stopped. I kid you not, every single night it's been a massive problem. We've covered it. We'll cover it again today, actually, because it is relevant to this question of how bad it is in Portland, Oregon, that the residents are getting fed up. Hey, can you guys go away? Can you guys stop doing this one single night? And of course, the police, it has gotten so bad there, will not even respond to the 911 calls due to their sanctuary city policy. But of course, we're going to be told again that there is absolutely no grounds to do this, right? Nothing to see here, ladies and gentlemen. So that said, guys, in today's video, we'll get into this. We'll show you what Trump is saying, what the Democrats are saying, and the truth, because it is the truth. So we'll get into it. First, though, do us a favor. If you enjoy our content, make sure you hit that like button down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new. Help us continue our push now to 600K subscribers. And that said, let us start off by giving you the Trump announcement, and then we'll show you what Democrats are saying. Nothing to see here. Okay.
This just in, pretty big news. President Trump sending troops to Portland, Oregon. That's at the request of Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem. I am directing Secretary of War Pete Hegseth to provide all necessary troops to protect war-ravaged Portland and any of our ICE facilities under siege from attack by Antifa and other domestic terrorists. I'm also authorizing full force if necessary. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Now, this is big news, and let me explain why. Portland has a Democratic mayor. Portland, Oregon, the state of Oregon, has a Democratic governor. So President Trump saying that he's sending troops there, it's a big question. Constitutional questions, questions that will be litigated, no doubts, and a big moment. And as I remember during my tenure as White House press secretary, there was a young MAGA supporter in Portland who lost his life at the hands of a violent Antifa man. No doubt a place that was at the epicenter of violence in 2020. Crime problems today. President Trump saying he is sending federal law enforcement. Big news. We'll keep you updated.
Well, it's kind of pretentious, but at the same time, Kayleigh McEnany does bring up a legitimate point, and that's that, oh, well, who knows if they're going to be able to do this, because some woke judge is probably going to sue and put a temporary injunction and say, no, Mr. President, you cannot use the American government to protect American citizens from violent terrorists. So I'm sure this whole debacle is coming once again. I think there has to be a genuine debate at a certain point. At what situation is it appropriate to simply say, okay, we're going to do the right thing? You know, it just has to be done. Not really trying to get too crazy with that. I'm just saying it's something you have to consider. But anyways, that said, we of course now have the nothing to see here response from the governor of Oregon, Kotek here, who apparently says she personally told President Trump that Oregon, guys, doesn't need troops amid the anti-ICE protests and unrest. It's not necessary, guys. Everything's perfectly fine. All right, let's take a listen.
As one executive to the other, I spoke with the president. I asked him not to send troops. I tried to understand his reasoning, and I told him we are taking care of it, that I have full faith and confidence in local law enforcement, and the folks here today, we do not need federal troops. And I said, we disagree, and he said, well, let's keep talking.
That was the reply.
Yes. In my conversations directly with President Trump and Secretary Noem, I have been abundantly clear with them that Portland and the state of Oregon believe in the rule of law, and we can manage our own local public safety needs. There is no insurrection, there is no threat to national security, and there is no need for military troops in our major city. Military service members should be dedicated to real emergencies. The members of the Oregon National Guard, their mission is to stand up and protect Oregonians, and they will do that every day, but they are not needed in the city. They are not needed here.
Should we do it, folks? I think we have to do it to them.
Please disperse. Nothing to see here, please.
It's just so it's insanely insulting to our intelligence. And there's a lot of examples, guys, that we could point out, right? I think it's inappropriate even for me to cast this as a problem that started in 2020, because I'm sure many of you remember the riots that were taking place in the streets of Portland and Seattle, specifically those two northwestern cities in 2017, 2018. Frankly, this is something close to a decade in the making now, whether that's the designation of Antifa as a domestic terror organization or the fact that, I mean, it's anarchy on the streets of America, right? If a government does not get control of that situation, then what is to be said? I mean, does the government just have no jurisdiction? Is Portland not even part of the United States? Because of the rule of law of the United States, apparently it's okay not to apply there. Then I don't know, like you want to talk so much about the constitutional questions, guys, and the legal challenges. Oh, federal overreach. How about the overreach of anarcho-tyranny? Like, at what point do we consider the fact that if a governor and a mayor just blatantly do not enforce their own laws that past legislatures and voters, etc., wanted and pushed for and are now enacted, at what point do they say you've basically abandoned your authority? You know, we talk about there's basically an insurrection and open rebellion against the United States government happening right now on our own streets. And either you control the situation, hey, we want that, right? We would prefer not to have to deploy federal resources, okay? You know, people seem to think that we have this obsession with it. No, I would like to have an America where it's just common sense. Oh, police do things like enforce the laws, right? It should be very simple, but of course we know that's not the case. And again, many examples, whether that's pre-2020 or 2020 itself, or everything since, or the recent anti-ICE riots. But I want to replay the very video we showed you in our prior video on Portland, because I know, and I hate to be repetitive sometimes, but first of all, it directly addresses the point. And secondly, you know, I know not everyone watches all of the videos or whatever, and it's exactly what is going on right now in Portland, where, again, this Oregon Democrat governor is claiming nothing to see here, everything is under control. Well, the situation on the ground for the past several months has indicated something different. And again, this is not a case of isolated violence or whatever. It's well documented. In the situation up there, the police are intentionally refusing to respond to the rioting. So you wonder why Trump is saying, oh, we have to send in troops. Well, gee, I don't know if local law enforcement not only is on, forget being like the capability or not, right? Forget whether they're able to adequately respond to the situation. When they consciously and publicly make the decision not to respond and not to enforce the law, gee, I have to say, I think that obviously sets a pretty strong precedent for saying, yeah, the federal government's going to have to do that for you. Something has to break here. Something has to change. So that said, take a listen. This is the situation in Portland that we're really responding to. It's not about one riot. It's not about one case of civil unrest or one guy got hurt or one guy got killed. No, it's a macro trend that, make no mistake about it, the evidence is clear, by the way. The local Democrats are enabling, abetting, and supporting, okay? Take a listen.
Anti-ICE protesters in Portland, Oregon, rolling out a guillotine, clashing with police and turning the streets into a battlefield outside a migrant detention facility there. It's the latest flashpoint in protests that has stretched nearly 3 months now. A Democrat mayor, Keith Wilson, stands firm on keeping Portland a migrant sanctuary city. Our correspondent Dan Springer has that story for us. So Dan, are we expecting more unrest?
Every night it happens, Sandra, and this is happening just outside of an ICE facility with hundreds of Portland residents living in apartments right across the street, and Portland police will not engage out of some fear that it will be perceived as helping ICE in violation of the sanctuary law. And what makes this even more frustrating for residents is that Portland police won't respond to noise complaints or even when assaults are witnessed.
I'm calling about the protesters. They cornered 2 women out here. They need help. They cornered them. Please send a cop.
Portland police have not made a single arrest since June 18th, despite a number of assaults. A protester hit one resident with a megaphone, then a fist. Despite the injuries, no arrest. One resident sued the city to force cops to enforce the laws, and this was uncovered during discovery. One officer telling another on the police radio, quote, "If it were not ICE, we could assist directly."
This is a full-on abdication of police duty in a 4-block radius that impacts some of the most vulnerable Oregonians that we have. Now they've said, meh, we're just going to let violent rioters do this for 80 straight nights, and we don't care.
Police in Portland declined an interview, but said in a statement, quote, "We take these concerns seriously. At the same time, we are committed to protecting individuals' rights to express themselves peacefully." Now, all of this is on top of 3 straight months of protests in 2020.
So peaceful, by the way.
And this rioting has really taken a toll on the city's reputation. There are so many vacancies in the city of Portland right now that it ranks next to last in good places to invest in the country. And they've lost the top 20 buildings for offices have lost 57% of their combined value in the last 5 years. $1.7 billion down the drain.
But trust me, the governor of Oregon, and I'm sure soon the national media, are going to claim crime is down. The situation is under control. There are no riots. There's mostly peaceful protests, which we all know happen after midnight, right? That's when the best protests happen, is after midnight. Here's the thing. Okay, first of all, I mean, it's obviously like verifiably false that the situation is under control, because as they point out, this has been happening every single night. There's been rioting every single night for several months. So the fact that it hasn't been stopped obviously shows it's not under control. But even then, more importantly, okay, you have to talk specifically not just about the fact that these crazy Antifa people are out in the streets, but specifically the fact that the Portland police are openly saying they will not respond. They have publicly abdicated their responsibility. Forget ICE for a second. We'll talk about that later, but to their own citizens, right? Even among their own citizens, they're not responding to the noise complaints of the people who live there. They're not responding to assaults that are happening in the streets, again, of their own citizens. So not only have they abdicated their local responsibility to actually enforce the law, they're literally just allowing this to happen, and they're saying that publicly to you. But furthermore, on the federal question here of the necessity to deploy troops, I mean, again, the Portland police said that due to their sanctuary city law, they cannot help ICE, even if there's violent attacking happening. There's a riot happening where they're trying to storm an ICE facility. So it once again seems to me, guys, like a very common sense decision to say, okay, if the local police are not going to stop violent terrorists from attacking ICE facilities, then federal authorities, whether that's troops, whether that's DHS, right, have to do so. I mean, it's pretty common sense. But forget that for a moment. I mean, we know the Democrats are bad faith. We know exactly what's going on. I think the bigger picture here needs to be an understanding that, I don't know how else to put it. You know, I remember this word being thrown out a lot, but this is an insurrection against the United States. I mean, you could see it in that way. Because it's not just an issue of like people are rioting in the streets or you have these violent terrorists. It's the fact that there's a open and public collaboration with the local and state government to willingly not enforce American laws, to willingly allow for the violence, to willingly, by the way, allow that violence to be happening among their own citizens, to turn a blind eye to all of it. I don't know. It seems to me this is a situation that historically in American history, whether you want to look at like the South Carolina crisis or the Whiskey Rebellion, many other situations, that actually does warrant a federal response, right? They always try to say, oh, Trump is taking such unprecedented actions on all these things, but I don't know. I don't know about that. Seems to me this is something that requires a lot more. And frankly, you know, I would make the case that most likely it would seem that to stick within the law and to not have to fight too many legal challenges, they're probably going to do what they did in Los Angeles, which is simply deploy the troops to protect federal facilities because they don't have the permission of the mayor or the governor to expand the enforcement throughout the city. And so it's basically like use federal resources to protect federal property. But again, there honestly, in my eyes, has to be a serious conversation as to whether maybe they should just federalize the Portland police. I'll just say that openly, okay? And oh, but the laws, I don't know. I'm just saying. We have to seriously reframe the way we're thinking about this. It's not just like rioting. It's the fact that there is a basically mass period of civil unrest that's being sponsored and abetted by the local government, who are openly, flagrantly, like just no longer enforcing the laws of the United States. I mean, at what point does the federal government say, okay, we have to stabilize that situation? I don't know. Just some food for thought. That said, though, guys, let me know your thoughts on all of this in the comment section down below. Be sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and until next time, God bless and peace.